after using the 2021 14-inch base model MacBook Pro for 1 month, I thought I'd make an update video talking about some of the things that I like about the new MacBook Pro, but also the things that have been driving me crazy after about 1 month of everyday use. Now, before I do get into the video, I'm going to kindly ask you guys at home to subscribe to my channel if you find my content useful. But if you don't find it useful and you want your chance at a $25 Amazon giveaway, then all you gotta do is be a subscriber, comment on the video, letting me know that you subscribed, or just comment in general on the video topic, and you'll be entered to win a $25 Amazon giveaway, which will be announced sometime next week. Now let's get into my thoughts of the new 2021 MacBook Pro. Now, usually when I'm making these kind of videos, I usually start with the good things and end with the bad. I'm gonna do it in reverse this time. I'm gonna start with the bad things. So let's talk about the cons of the new base model 14-inch MacBook Pro. The first thing that I like to talk about is the battery life. Now, Apple states that this new MacBook Pro is supposed to get 17 hours of video playback and around 11 hours of general web browsing. I can say that I definitely do not get anywhere close to the times quoted by Apple. And it's funny because Apple is usually on point. Specifically, I'm getting about 4 hours of battery life if I have a heavy day. So for example, if I'm editing videos in Final Cut, editing photos in Photoshop or Adobe Lightroom, then those days I'm gonna get like 4 hours tops. I'm lucky if I get 4 hours. Realistically, it's around 3 hours, which is not great. If I have a lighter day, then I'm gonna get around 7 hours of battery life. And it does kind of suck. You know, I'm paying a lot of money, especially in Canada. This thing costs around $2,700 for the model that I got. So I'd expect for it to last all day. However, in my case, I'm not getting that use. The next thing that I'd list as a con is the design. Now, I'm not a fan of this design after using it for about a month. At first, I was kind of on the fence about it. I was leaning towards not liking it, but I think that this design is kind of like a regression for Apple standards. I think in the past, they did have better designs with their computers, but with this one, I just don't like the way it looks. It feels hefty, first of all, but also it looks hefty. It looks very chunky, thick, and it does not look as sleek as the other MacBooks that they made in like the last couple of years. So I always loved the design language of the MacBook Air, and that is what I gravitated to, but I didn't buy it because it didn't have the pro specs of the MacBook Pro, except for last year where it's basically the exact same thing. Upgrading from the Air to the Pro this year was a big jump for me, and I'm not a fan of the design, not at all. It's just too chunky, heavy. I don't like carrying it around, and I just don't like the way it looks. The last issue that I wanted to mention in this section was the 120 Hz display. So, okay, let me say this. Apple, if you guys did not say that this had a 120 Hz display, I never would have known. While it is a smooth computer, I personally can't tell when it's running 120 Hz. And apparently it's not running 120 Hz most of the time that you're using the computer. Apple does need to fix that. I think they recently did a Safari update, but it still does not work for 120 Hz. You can actually go and test out to see if 120 Hz is working in your browser, but for me, it wasn't. So that kind of sucks. Just because they promised it and they didn't deliver on it, I'm gonna have to ding them on that. I think it was a con. Finally, it's time to move on to what I like so far after using this computer for 1 month every single day. I figured I'd pick up the first one available, and that was the base model MacBook Pro, and I love it. Basically, after using it every single day, I can't tell that this thing does not have the top of the line specs because it's really smooth. Typically speaking, I'm editing videos in a 4K format, multiple layers at a time. I'm also having effects or transitions or titles on my timeline, and that will basically slow down any older computer. But this breezes by. Not only that, but in Lightroom, which is my photo editor of choice, I'm able to import photos, like 50 photos in like 30 seconds. It's mad quick. And then also I'm able to export it in like the blink of an eye. So I can export a batch amount of photos at one time. And that is really important, especially if you're working with deadlines or you just have a high volume of work. Importing and exporting is really important and can really increase your productivity if it's good. So far this computer lasts really well. I haven't noticed a slowdown with it. Nothing is bogging down. It works well, and Is that the 120 hertz or is that the system? I don't know, but I think that for the most part, I'm gonna credit it to the M1 Pro chip, which is Apple's latest chip, an improvement of the M1 chip of last year. Again, I got the base model, 16 gigs of RAM, so I did not go crazy with it, but the computer is still going crazy, if you know what I mean. Let's talk about the display for a minute. This display is the best looking display on any device that I own, bar none. This looks really crisp. Editing photos is a breeze. One thing to note though is that Apple did market it as having 1600 peak brightness, but the peak brightness only comes on during HDR content, which for me, like if you're watching Netflix or YouTube, sometimes you'll come across it, but it does not go up to 1600 peak brightness when you're doing things like editing photos or videos. But for me, having 1000 nits brightness is still like 600 nits over my MacBook Air last year, so it's an improvement. And editing photos and videos is really accurate, and that's very important to people like me who edit photos or videos. And so far I've been really impressed with it, so much so that I stopped using my 4K LG display back there for pretty much most of my video editing. I moved it all to the 14-inch MacBook Pro, which is a perfect size for doing things. It's very portable. Content still looks good on the display. It's not too small. It's not pinched by any means. So I'd recommend going with the 14-inch if you're deciding between the 14 and the 16-inch. Apple actually offers an XDR display that costs like $5,000, and this display is as good, if not better than that display, for a lot cheaper. If you need to have a display, you might as well get the best display, and that is with this new MacBook Pro. I might be the minority here, but I'm going to be the only person that lists the notch as a pro. I actually like the design of the display with the notch as opposed to without it. I feel like it copies Apple's design language of like the iPhone 13s. It just standardizes Apple's design language, makes it look more modern, and also differentiates it between any of the older MacBooks. Now there are utilities that you can use to black it out, but personally speaking, I don't care that much about it. It goes away half of the time that you're using the computer, or more than half. So if I'm watching content or on YouTube or anything like that, then I'm not going to see the notch. Most apps full screen block out the notch anyway, so honestly it's been good for me. I like it. Another pro of the MacBook Pro that I like to mention is the ports. Now of course by now you probably know all of the ports that Apple has added in the new MacBook Pro, but for the most part the port that matters the most to me is the SD card slot. That is the one that I use the most. So thank you Apple for finally listening to my cries and everyone else's cries and adding that SD card slot back. And lastly, I just want to spend a minute talking about the keyboard. If you use the M1 Air, then you pretty much know exactly what the keyboard experience is with the new MacBook Pro. It's literally the same thing. They've put it onto the MacBook Pro, and it means that typing feels good. So there are little tweaks, including changing some of the function keys at the top, but other than that, same experience. I love typing on it, typing out scripts or typing out video outlines or sending emails. This feels really good on the keyboard. So that's just my opinion. Fight me if you want. Keyboard is really good. I'm glad that they got rid of the touch bar, because the touch bar used to give me so much problems with my 2019 MacBook Pro. I always have to restart it because the touch bar froze, and I'm glad that they took that away. So that pretty much wraps up the video. This MacBook Pro is the MacBook Pro of the future. It is a redesign and is honestly my favorite tech device that I purchased this year, just because it enables me to do everything that I felt like Apple stopped me from doing with the last computers. Yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. If you have any questions or opinions, drop them down below. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up, and also don't forget to subscribe to enter the giveaway. I'm gonna see you guys in the next one. Peace.